Welcome to the Love on the Go podcast, brought to you by Carolina's Matchmaker. I'm Laurie, and for over 17 years, I've been helping singles find the relationship of their dreams all over the Carolinas. Along the journey, I've met so many amazing professionals and experts from various fields, and I'm excited to introduce them to you. What's my goal? I want to help you look at love and relationships in a new way and to grow in your understanding of how love works. Let's learn together how people have overcome personal obstacles and have found love, first and foremost with themselves. The ultimate goal is realizing that you are worthy and deserving of love. Let's get started. Oh boy, we got a good one today. All right, we've got Joy Farley on the podcast today, and Joy's a real estate broker in Charlotte, and she actually specializes in new construction. And so she does that. And then she also has like the most amazing social media presence. You can find her at Jump for Pure Joy on Instagram and TikTok. But Joy, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about our conversation.
Oh, we're going to get into it. So Joy and I met at an event at the People's Market a few weeks back through a mutual friend, Meredith Dean, who helps with my social media consulting with the Dean's List. And Joy and I were instantly like head to head talking about this big conversation about dating in Charlotte and what she has been finding and all of her ideas around the difficulty and expectations around everything. And then we started talking about it just now, and I said, let's start recording.
So record. This is the real tea.
We are doing it. We're doing it. So Joy, tell us kind of your backstory. How old are you? Have you been married before?
So I am 33. I'll be 34 in October. Never married and no kids that I know of.
There you go. Wonderful. Okay. What are we talking about today? Let's throw it out there.
We can talk about all of it. I think a lot of people approach me sometimes and they're like, why are you single? Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's a heavy question where you're like, well, I sometimes ask myself the same questions, but then I also go out into the wild, and see what's around. And then I'm very just underwhelmed more times than not for a myriad of reasons. I don't know if it's just today's day and age. I don't know if it's the pandemic that had a huge effect on a lot of people, their personalities, people not wanting to like be seen. I don't know. But I think especially in this city, people are just very flippant, very casual. And if you can't dive deep, I always tell people like, I'm an old soul. I love to have just real conversations and really get to know people. But I think when you deal with a lot of surface level, not looking for anything serious kind of people, it's just a huge turnoff. And then it kind of makes you just not want to try anymore.
Understood. And I've heard this before from many of my clients. So you have seen a marked difference between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic in the way that people are behaving out and about, and also in the way that they're communicating.
I think it's a mixture of, I would say the pandemic had a huge effect. I've run into people who are personal friends of mine, right? Yeah. That their personalities kind of really shifted with this when you just get used to being by yourself and not going out. And I think left to our own devices, we do the bare minimum. If no one's holding you accountable, no one's calling you higher, nobody is expecting anything out of you, right? Then you just kind of melt into your couch and you don't really do anything. And depending on what you're looking for in a relationship, especially, those kinds of things become really unattractive if you're trying to pull in, an interested party to be like, wow, like we have a lot in common. Well, I don't have a lot in common with any of those things. Yes. And so I think it's just really hard sometimes to be like, well, are we looking in the same direction? Are you even on the same page? And at the end of the day, like, is it worth the difference of your time to even pursue something like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Tell us a little bit about your relationship history.
So I would say I've been primarily happily single for probably longer than I've been in relationships. And people always like, Joy, what's your deal? Like, Do you just like not like dating? Or are you not out and about? If you know me, like I'm always outside,
Yes, you
like
are.
always outside. You
Yes.
follow me around for 2 seconds. It's like my little brother cracks me up sometimes. He's like, just watching your life is kind of exhausting to me. You know, you're always going out and about. But
You are.
sometimes I find that, especially in relationships, I mean, I was in a long-term relationship in college. You know,
Mhm.
I've been in a couple of relationships, you know, post-college. I think the pandemic, that's been 3 years. I didn't date
Mhm.
anybody during the pandemic.
Yeah.
That's 3 years of time that it has just like elapsed.
Yes.
But I also find that most people are either a couple of things: intimidated by me, which I've heard, this is just like honest feedback,
Okay.
or they assume that I'm in a relationship, so they don't even like
Mhm.
approach me, which is
Why do you
interesting.
think, yeah, that is interesting. Why do you think people think you're intimidating?
Well, I'm 6'1". I used to
Yeah.
think that it was just my height, which I'm very confident in.
Oh
I
yeah.
wear heels, like
Yeah.
I'm totally comfortable with who I am.
Yes.
But you'd run into a lot of guys who either are intimidated by, you know, not being taller, or assume that
Mhm.
like I need someone who's like 9 feet tall for me to feel like secure in me, which is so weird.
Would you date
Um,
shorter, Joy?
yeah, I've dated guys that are shorter, or
Okay.
like maybe a little bit shorter. I mean, my boyfriend in college was 7'1". He was a college basketball player.
Okay.
It was hilarious walking around town being like, wow, I'm 6'1", you're a whole foot taller than me. You
Yeah.
know, it was
Yeah.
always a topic of conversation. But since then, like, you know, guys that are my height, maybe a little shorter, I'm
Mhm.
not bothered by that. You know,
Okay,
I think
good.
it's mainly men who are like, oh, well, she's taller, and like I don't know where I fit into that equation, you know?
Mhm.
Or people have preconceived notions of what I prefer, and no one's even asked
Yeah.
me,
Interesting. Okay.
you know?
So if a very confident 5'10" man was really interested in you, treated you right, communicated properly, did all the right things, would you be like, okay,
Absolutely. I always tell
okay.
people when it comes to height, for me at least, I think you can talk to any tall woman and be
Mhm.
like, if height is a constant point of conversation, that's going to get old really fast.
Yep.
You know, the tall jokes, the, you know, oh my gosh, the insecurities that start coming out in them of, oh, you know, wishing they could be taller, or wishing that you didn't wear heels, or you didn't wish that you didn't show up fully as yourself.
Mhm.
But I think at the end of the day, when life goes left and not right, your height is going to be the last thing that you're going to care about.
100%. Agree.
So I am very confident in just, I'm like, I'm not getting any shorter. So what do you
Mhm.
want me to do? But I
Yes.
think if you ran into the right person that does all of the right things and is a
Mhm.
perfect match for you, then I
Mhm.
don't think height should be a part of the equation to move forward or eliminate somebody.
I love what you're saying because I cannot tell you how many times a woman who is like 5'2", 5'3", 5'4", saying they want a guy who's 6 foot or
Who's 6 foot?
taller. Give me
If
a
you're
break.
5'10", like, don't talk to me. Like,
Yeah.
it's hilarious. But
Why?
most times than not, you don't run into the opposite saying, hey, if you're taller, does it matter if he's not as tall? Or, I mean,
Mhm.
let's be honest, when I, you know, was an athlete, I was always around athletes. My brothers are tall. My dad's 6'6". You know, you run
Mhm.
into just those are the people you find yourself around,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But I feel like now, being a professional, you're not in college anymore, you're not in high school anymore, you're not a
Yeah.
jock,
Yep.
and you don't run into people every day who are 6'4", 6'5", six
Mhm.
seven. So I think by default, I became like a heightist. I was like, oh, if you're not
Mm.
like 6'5", then like, why are you even here?
Mm.
And now you run into so many great people. And the last thing that I think at the end of the day should matter, if it's a true connection,
Yeah.
is who's taller than who, or who's seeing eye to eye, or not so much.
Perfect. I love it. What kind of athlete were you in college?
I played volleyball. In high school, I played, you know, basketball and
Uh-huh.
softball.
Uh-huh.
I always have just been like, well, I want to stay active even after college. You know, everyone's like, people come to my office and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I get up from my desk and they're like, did you play basketball?
Right.
It is the easiest icebreaker you'll ever
Yeah.
run into, because you don't even have to like do anything other than, stand up and people are like, oh my gosh, like tell me your
Right.
whole story.
So you don't mind it when people ask you that kind of thing?
No, I think
Okay,
it's just,
good.
I think people are just naturally curious,
Yeah,
so if
good.
you take offense to the small things, if anything, it's the easiest icebreaker ever. You'll
Yeah.
be at a restaurant or something and you stand up and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize you were so tall. And I'm like, what a pleasant surprise.
Yes, exactly.
And you just don't run into, you don't run into tall, the average American female is
Yep.
like 5'4".
Yeah.
If you see anybody over like 5'8" and you're like, wow, you're so tall.
Exactly. And the average height of an American man is 5'9".
Is it really?
Yes. So
Well,
that's the disconnect right there for all these women that
exceptional.
want tall. I know, for the exceptional. Okay, let's talk about more about what you're seeing, because I know there's a lot of frustration. I've talked to a lot of your friends about this as well. How are men, so let's talk heterosexual relationships. How are men not showing up right now in a meaningful way? What are they doing? What are you seeing?
Oh, it's a great question. It's so loaded. I find that either men aren't really looking necessarily, just kind of like I tell people all the time, I'm not looking, but I'm also not hiding either. So
Mhm.
it's kind of this balance between maybe the way the casualness of relationships for some, maybe people aren't really looking to be in a serious relationship. So they come
Mhm.
off very just blasé about everything.
Right.
This kind of, surface level, don't want to get too close because for whatever reason. And then before you know it, you're like, it's not meaningful. You're
Mhm.
not showing up in a meaningful way at all because I don't take you seriously. You
Right.
end up honestly either being just a great connection or, sometimes you meet great guys at the wrong time. And I
Right.
think that's been a consistent theme I know for me in my life. But when you talk about showing up in a meaningful way, I just
Right.
don't see men pursuing anything. It's kind of like, oh, well, they'll just come to me. Or,
Right.
if you're, I'm not on the online dating scene. People think I'm
Mhm.
crazy. They're like, where are you going to meet anybody? So I'm going to break
Right.
into your house. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's like, I don't see men truly pursuing women in any kind of meaningful way because it's just so casual.
Perfect. So let's take an example of somebody that you recently tried to date and how they didn't show up and how they could have. Let's play it out that way. What could they have done to make you feel special?
I feel like the folks that I have been in communication with,
Yes.
it was never necessarily like, hey, we're pursuing some kind of dating relationship.
Right.
At the end of the day, great guy, wrong state. We're not even in the same place. And so
Okay.
that became, I think, the biggest thing for us of like, hey, like, you're an amazing human. Like,
Mhm.
the whole 9 yards, like you check all the boxes. There's
Mhm.
just no way that this is ever going to work because we're in the wrong location,
Okay.
like
Yes.
completely set in like our careers and just completely um mismatched in that way.
Yep.
But I wouldn't even say honestly that I've even been looking to date anybody recently here
Right.
in Charlotte.
Mhm.
It's weird. It's like sometimes being local
Mhm.
complicates things to be like, oh, well, if you're always around, but then you talk about like a great person that you have a great connection with that is not in the same place. And you look at life very differently when you're like, well, would I be willing to compromise or move or do all these other
Right.
things? And like when I am honest with myself, the answer that always comes back is no. It's kind of like,
Mm.
well, am I willing to uproot my life and put it somewhere else and for somebody right now?
Mhm.
And I think that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes for me, being like, well, am I just being selfish or am I just really just being honest with myself?
Right.
If you meet a great person, okay, well, is one great person worth changing everything in your life for?
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know. I think that's just sometimes the biggest struggle, I think, for me is, either finding someone that's here with the
Mhm.
frustrations I think all of us see here in Charlotte.
Right.
Or, finding that right person and making it something worth making it work.
Yeah.
And
Now,
that's the struggle.
I'm hearing you talk negatively about sort of the dating scene in Charlotte. And are you referring to the people that you meet when you're out and about mainly when you say
Man.
that?
Mm-hmm.
So the guys that you probably want to be meeting are probably at
They're
home, aren't
probably,
they?
I don't know where they are. Where are they? Where are they, Laurie?
Are they
Where
hanging
are they
out?
hanging out?
Are they hanging out on their couches like you were talking about earlier? Like not, maybe they're not extroverted, maybe they're not hitting the scene, they're not going after it, maybe they're
But
online dating.
I also give some grace to, maybe there's people that you meet out, but
Mhm.
maybe you might have great people, just like I feel like I'm a great catch,
Mhm.
but at the same time, where are you meeting these people?
Right.
Are you gonna meet the same caliber of person just out and about? Or do you have people who are working or own a
Mhm.
business or are doing other things that might be great people? But I mean, I'm not online dating. So
Right.
when I run into a lot of people who are like, oh my gosh, I've been on 37 hinge dates this week.
Mhm.
And I'm like, how do you even make time for this? And two, you know, did anything come of it? I mean, I got dared to make an online profile. It was like Bumble and Hinge it was like a year and a half ago, maybe. And that was
Okay.
probably like prior to the pandemic. Gosh, time is like evaporating before
Yes.
our eyes.
100%.
But I literally was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. So
Okay.
I made a profile, I did the whole thing. It
Mhm.
was exhausting being
Yeah.
like just swiping through people. And then it just became very
Mhm.
superficial, like, well, people put their height on there or, their comments about like random things or their political
Mhm.
views or
Yeah.
where they stand on certain things. I'm just like, this is like, you wake up with a bunch of messages or a bunch of matches or not matches, or you're like, I can't even find one person that I would even consider spending time with. So I did go on a couple of
Mhm.
hinge dates.
Okay.
Um, and of course, like you have a great time. You're like, okay, well, maybe this is not so bad. And then you end up with someone who's like completely like ghosts you,
Yeah.
and you're like, this is ridiculous. We're all grown at this point. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm like, I've always been really mature. But I'm like, at this point, I'm in my 30s, and you have people who just can't communicate.
So if you
How?
go on one date with somebody, and they're not interested, you want them to say to you, "Hey, listen, I enjoyed meeting you, but I'm not finding it to be a match." You'd rather
1,000%.
hear that rather than just not being responsive.
1,000%. I
Okay.
just think that anything in life, like if it's not your vibe, it's
Yeah.
not something that you want to pursue, to at
Mhm.
least have the decency to be like, hey, like, thank you for your time. I don't feel like this is good, like a great connection for the two of us.
Mhm.
Or maybe you end up meeting a great person, but might not be like a romantic match.
Okay.
There's no harm, no foul with that. Not everybody's going to be your person.
Yeah. Because some people are like, yeah, I'd rather just not hear anything if it's just one date.
Yeah.
No
I mean,
need,
like,
because they might be feeling the same way. It's like, oh, okay, thanks, buddy. Thanks for letting me know you weren't interested.
thanks,
I wasn't
friend.
interested either. Thanks for
Thanks,
nothing.
friend.
Samesies.
Yeah, but I just
Okay.
think that if that's the start of a relationship
Hmm.
or a
Hmm.
start of something and you're already starting off on we can't communicate, effectively, then again, that just shows the level of maturity or where someone's at. I wouldn't ghost you. Be like,
Yeah.
hey, had a great time. Don't think we're a great romantic fit, but wish you all the best.
So did you respond in that way to anyone after a first date?
Oh, like I think the handful of hinge dates that I went on,
Yeah.
like none of them were a match, with the
Right.
exception of like one, we had a great time. And literally we were messaging prior, ended up going on our first date, and
Right.
then had a great time. And then it was like, hey, let's set something up for, that week or whatnot. And literally goes, you think you just like fell off the face of the earth
Right.
versus just saying, hey, like we had a great time. That was like undeniable. You can have a great time with people without it being like, well, we're not a good
Yeah.
dating match.
Yeah.
And to
People
be
are,
mature enough to
yep.
say, like, we
Yes.
can hang out again. I'm just
Right.
not interested in dating you.
Right. That I understand. And then with the other guys that you weren't interested in, did you reach out to them and be like, hey, listen, I enjoyed meeting you, but I'm not feeling a match? Or did you kind of wait on them to get to you and then you told them?
I don't know. I shut that down real fast.
You just
Being
let them
like,
know.
hey, yeah. I think some things you just can't manufacture.
Yeah.
Where like either you're not who you portrayed yourself to be online, which I think
Yeah.
is commonplace.
Mhm.
Everybody can be a hero behind their keyboard, find witty
Yeah.
things to say. You're like, oh, he's funny. Ah.
Yeah.
And then you actually spend time with each other and you're like, not the same at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I don't know, people do tell me, hey, the way that you show up online is exactly how you show up in our life. And I never
Mhm.
really understood why that was such a big deal
Yeah.
until it's the opposite, where the way
Yeah.
people show up online is the very opposite in el contraire to how they show up in real
Yes.
life.
Yeah.
And then you're
Yeah.
just like, it's not a vibe. It's not for me.
So, what is to you, what is do you have like a template of what you normally say to people? Like what is the verbiage you use to sort of shut it down?
Just like when people ask me if I have a social media strategy, I'm like, no, I just speak from the heart.
Yeah. Do you
um,
just say, I'm not
And I
feeling
I
it,
just think,
or?
and it doesn't have to be some cookie cutter auto-generated response
Right.
to someone. I think it could be very genuine saying, hey, like we had a great time, but unfortunately I don't intend to pursue anything out of this outside of friendship.
Good.
It's almost the gracious decline. Sometimes you
Yeah.
get invited to things and you can't say yes to everything. My mom
Mhm.
taught me this. It's called the gracious decline. You basically say, thank you so much for your time. Because when we're trading our time, you can make more money. You can do a whole lot of things. You can't get your time back.
That's right.
So when you thank people for their time, saying, hey, thank you so much for your time, whether you're getting invited to something or having to turn down something or
Mhm.
someone, you
Right.
know, I typically say, hey, thanks for your time. I really appreciated, what fill in the blank, whatever conversation or whatever came up that was impactful, but if I'm being honest, I don't see anything coming of you and I, to be very specific, not just anybody, you and me. I
Yes.
don't see anything outside of pursuing this as a friendship, or even if that's not even the case, being like, hey, wish you the best on the scene, but
Right.
it's going to be a no for me, dog.
Yeah. And then
Respectfully.
do you normally approach people when you're out and about, or do you wait for them to approach you?
Um, Probably it's a mix.
Okay.
I find, and it goes back to being like, I think genuinely most women want to be pursued.
Mhm.
And I think for some men who are like, oh, these alpha females out here, being like, I see it, I like it, I want it, I bought it on
Mhm.
the dating scene, like who are, I don't go out looking for men.
Right.
No. I mean, there's been a few times where you're like, oh, you strike up a conversation or
Right.
something, but it's not like, hey, I'm going to pick you up and, we're going to have a great life together. No.
Right.
But I also find that there's a way that you can approach a woman without being like sleazy or just blatantly just like disrespectful. I always tell
Okay.
people, I'm offended when I'm not offended at like gas stations or being out and about. I
Right.
remember one of my exes being like, gosh, it really does take a lot to be with someone who is fully themselves,
Mhm.
going here, going there. I mean, people just say the craziest things. Like you'd be walking down the side of the street, minding your own business,
Yeah.
and people will come at you with all kinds of stuff. And I think sometimes it's either like you're always going to want to fight,
Yeah.
like either you're always going to be in like fight mode,
Right.
or you got to be secure enough in yourself to be like, she's not interested in you, clearly,
Yeah.
so I think it goes both ways. If you have something that catches your eye, I'm a big fan of like, if you see something and someone always say it, when people
Mhm.
approach you at Target or wherever, and they give you a genuine compliment, like don't just pat people on the head and send them off. Just to be like, hey, thank you. Or you strike up a conversation, but nothing ever serious comes from those things. So when my friends tell me, oh yeah, like I met my husband like on a plane, on a train, at the grocery store, I'm like, where do y'all shop? I need to know. Do I need to fly Delta more often? I'm confused. Really, my girlfriend and I went on, we have worked out together for years, great friends from high school, literally met like her husband on a flight to California in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh my
And I'm
God.
like, how does this happen? Maybe just, divine appointments. I don't know.
Did they take their masks off or?
Apparently, I had just gotten a chemical peel. I was not even like my tip top shelf, but I guess you run into the right people, and the surface level really doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
You really meet someone who sees you, not
Mm-hmm.
just on the outside, but sees you. In my heart of hearts, I really feel like we're all looking for home, and sometimes that's other people. But I do find that if you know who you are, I think that's the biggest disconnect a lot of times between me and others, is like these people who don't know who they are or know who they're not. I think those are both very valuable pieces of, information, especially when you're getting to know somebody. It's kind of like, I don't know, I'm just existing, and I'm like, Jan, what are you doing with your life? I want to know what keeps you up at night.
So you get into the deep conversations early on to really
I
peel
mean,
back the layers.
you can really get to know people by either what they're driven by, the things that light them up, the things that keep them up at night, their relationships with their family,
Mm-hmm.
and the things that they enjoy doing outside of work. We can all sit here, I'm pretty sure every time you go out, whether it's a social event, the first thing that comes up is, oh, what do you do? It's like, for fun,
Right.
I keep my lights on. What do you mean? Like, what do I do? And I think most people are just, they go to work, they come home, they go to work, they come home. And then we all just become very robotic and like, oh, what would I even do if I was going to take you somewhere? Like, I never go outside. It's just kind of like, okay, well, we're clearly, and I realize that I'm very different when it comes to, I love exploring new things. I love being the new kid. I love trying things for the first time, even if it's not something I would do again, being like, oh, I've never been here, never done this, And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are more so, they like the comfort of routine
Yes.
or familiarity in some
Yes.
ways. And so going in, exploring and trying new things, or doing things for the first time that you're not completely sure that you're going to be good at,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't think I even want to try. I'm just going to. So I think novelty to me is kind of, I don't know, just is the spice of life, where I could be like, hey, I love meeting new people. I love going new places, and finding someone who's willing to be adventurous and, get out of their comfort zone, I think is really what brings us all to life. But you
Mm.
got to be willing to be like, I'm not dragging you around either. That's another thing. Being like,
Yes.
I don't want to, like, my parents are complete opposites. My mom is the social butterfly. My dad is very reserved and
Yep.
like, hey, you go have fun. Like, I don't feel any type of way. Like, you're not leaving me behind. Like, I'll have a
Right.
great time by myself.
Welcome to my
um,
world.
yeah. And I think you have to have enough things in common, I would say, to have a connection, but enough things
Mm-hmm.
that, where you're different, to see a different point of view or to see the other side of the coin, because it's completely opposite to how your brain works or how you show up. But finding that even balance. But I'm like, I don't know, I don't want anybody like that's gonna be feel like they're gonna be like stuck under, doing what I want to do all the time, or that they don't want to go do things. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to like drag them around.
No, you definitely don't want to drag them around. And what you need, I said that facetiously, welcome to my world. But sometimes people they're not those people. They're more introverted, they're more homebodies. As long as the engagement in the home is interesting and
It's positive.
fascinating, it can be okay for the extroverts that are in a relationship with the introvert, or even, people with different energies and whatnot. But
Right.
that homebody time, because really, I mean, most of the time a couple is at home, for the most part. Well, maybe not in your world, Joy, but for
I was
most
like,
people,
I'm rarely at home, but when I am
yeah.
home, I want peace in my home.
Exactly. It's true. But once you sort of get settled into a relationship, oftentimes people are not going out every night together. That's more of a single lifestyle thing for
Yeah.
most people. And then if a kid comes into the picture, forget about it. You're
Forget
home a
about
lot.
it.
Yeah.
I'll
So
be
you
home all
need
the
to,
time if you need me.
yeah, you need to be able to create things at home that are exciting. And then it could be kind of more mellow stuff, but how engaging is the conversation and how intellectual is the other person and how's the sense of humor and blah, 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 blah. This is so interesting. You were so dynamic. I'll tell you that the first time I met you, I was so intrigued about you. You were so bubbly, creative, open-minded. You're stunningly gorgeous. You are down to earth. You were engaging to talk to. You told me about your family and about your mom and how cool she is, like you just did just now. And I'm sure your dad is too, obviously, and your family. I mean, I think that those are all incredible qualities to be able to give to a relationship and, obviously to receive back. So you were like the full package, Joy.
I mean, I think so too.
Yes.
However, you're like, no, but like my biggest fear, honestly, sometimes in life is to be like, would I be willing to trade all of these great things that I have now for either couldn't even see myself doing that, of like settling for just being in a relationship. I think a lot of my friends, people that are in their 30s who desperately will do anything just to like be in a relationship for like the sake of just being in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want people to sell themselves short of saying, hey, like enjoy your single life until that status changes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think if you're going to sit on the sidelines watching life go by, waiting for someone that may or may not ever show up for you, and you're not truly living for everything that you bring to the table and not worrying about, someone changing your last name, if that ever is like a thing, or staying stuck in like the sadness of some people are like single and sad and single and lonely and so desperately wanting to do anything to like be in a relationship, so they'll just take anybody. And I think us as women have got to get to a place of like, no, like you've got to be okay with you. Like, no matter what your relationship status is, like, I don't feel any type of way when people are like, oh, you're single. And I'm like, happily single. It's
That's
like a
right.
thing. You can be happily single. Don't feel bad for me. I am living my very best life.
Oh yeah.
But I do find that for those who are dating with the intention of marriage, and I haven't really figure that out for myself either, being like, is that even a desire of my heart to be married and, play house with somebody? I don't know. But what I do know is that you can enjoy where your feet are at right here, right now, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go enjoy your singleness for the season that it is, because that's always subject to change. You can meet someone tomorrow on an airplane like my girlfriend did. And her whole life changed in 2 years. Like literally met her husband on this flight. They like their first date was his sister's wedding. Like, hey, you want to crash the wedding together? That's just like who they are. And literally we're engaged, married, and had a kid in 2 years.
Wow.
So it's kind of like life can accelerate really fast when you find the right person. Like I feel like I have, in my bio I sent you, I was like, hey, people call me the friend collector. Some people collect jewelry or witty mugs or whatever, and it's like I can find a friend wherever I go, but that doesn't mean that every person you meet and can instantly connect with. I think that's just my God-given gift of just meeting people and feeling like, I mean, we met one time, and out and about. And then before we know it, we're connected. I'm like, I feel like I've known Laurie for my whole life.
100%.
But when you have that kind of energy that gives, it's not just like, oh, well, tell me all about you. And I'm not going to those are the worst, where you're like, tell me all about you. And then you're not willing to, reciprocate. Hey, well, I want to get to know you too. And then it's kind of like, oh, well, not willing to share,
Yeah.
But when you meet people, you can easily connect with them, but it doesn't have to be a romantic connection. It doesn't have to turn into anything like, oh, I think I met my person, or who knows, maybe you just found another great friend. But I think if you're out and about searching for things to fit in a certain box, it usually never shows up that way anyway. Sometimes hey, you ended up dating your best friend. You didn't, you're like, hey, we were friends for years, and or someone you weren't interested in at all, and then something changes, but to enjoy your singleness, there's nothing better than enjoying where your feet are at, not thinking that you're deficient or lacking in any way, and just fully show up to life as it is, where you are, with what you got. And I think those are the best times sometimes to be found. I don't think it's my job to go searching. I think it's just my job to just be me, be a good thing worth finding. And, I was like, I got nothing but time and I'm still young. So people who think that like they're like in their 30s and like old and washed up, and you're like, because everyone's looking for a 22-year-old, you're like, that's not the case.
No, it is not. No, it is
Not the
not.
case.
Joy, you're amazing. I can't wait for everyone to hear this podcast. Do you have a charity that you would like to give to? I was put in the show notes somebody's favorite
Ooh, a
charity.
charity I'd like to give to. I will say there's a great organization called Samaritan's Feet. We have volunteered there as a family a few times. They literally put shoes on kids across the globe.
Yes.
I'm a shoe lover, and I can't imagine, living life like, say, collecting shoes, collecting friends, but to pass that along too. It's called Samaritan's Feet.
Okay, perfect. Joy, you are a joy. Thank you so much. And I will look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Very soon. I hope you have the best day ever.
Thanks for listening to Love on the Go. I hope you join us on our next episode. You can make sure to know when it is by following us wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed it, it'd be great if you left us a review. I'd appreciate it. In the meantime, to learn more about me and how my team can help you, visit carolinasmatchmaker.com. Until next time.